I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is the surpassing worth of knowing Christ. I want to share this video. We're going to get into the word and go through some scriptures, but I want to encourage you, no matter where you are in your walk with Jesus, it is part of your inheritance to get the experiential knowledge of Jesus, to actually get to feel his presence, hear his voice, experience the joy and the pleasure of being around him and in his house. This is your inheritance. And I want to encourage and inspire a longing in you to pursue your inheritance, to begin to go after this thing and ask to see him and to hear him and to encounter him in his word and in different ways that he would want to express himself to you. This is so important. Not only do I want you to experience this, but I want you to become addicted to his presence and his voice, into his love, into being around him. So much so that that is the chief desire of your heart for the rest of your life. If you look at me real quick in Philippians chapter 3, verse 8, Paul says a profound statement. He says, "Indeed, I count all things as loss for the surpassing worth or greatness of knowing Christ Jesus." Some translations say, "I count all things as loss for the excellency of knowing Christ." And if you look at this in context, that's a nice statement. But you have to understand what Paul is saying. Paul in Philippians, just before he makes that statement, he shares with us his lineage. Paul lets you know that he was moving up the corporate ladder. He was a powerful figure in the eyes of society, in the eyes of the world. Paul was a Hebrew of Hebrews, he said. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. He was circumcised exactly like you should as a good Jewish boy on the 8th day. He was a Pharisee. He was zealous for persecuting the Christians. We know that once he got saved, the apostles were all afraid of him because they'd heard of Paul persecuting the church. His name was spreading and he was increasing in fame. Think about that. In the eyes of his society, Paul had it all. He was on his way. And now Paul is writing Philippians from prison. He's actually lost all of that prestige. And he says, guess what? I count it all as dung, as rubbish, as trash compared to knowing Christ. Now, why could Paul say that? This is not just a good Bible verse or Sunday school verse. It's because Paul literally encountered the man Christ Jesus multiple times. If you look in 2 Corinthians 12, Paul is sharing that he was caught up to the third heaven. He experienced glorious realities that he can't even talk about or describe. He's experienced Jesus. We know in Acts 9 that Jesus spoke to Paul and encountered him powerfully on the Damascus Road. He actually met Jesus himself, and he references that multiple times as part of his testimony throughout Acts, in Acts chapter 23 or 24 and also 26. So Paul is saying here, I've actually experienced Jesus, and even though I'm in prison right now and I've lost all of the worldly and earthly and societal prestige that I have, I don't care, because I found Jesus to be so much more worthy and glorious. Not only that, but Paul was lovesick. If you go back in Philippians 1, Paul said is struggling because he's saying, I'd rather be with Christ than be here. But I'm here for you. To live is Christ. To die is gain for me. But I've died to myself and I'm letting Jesus live through me for the sake of you. But I would rather be with him than even be on earth. He's lovesick, ruined for love. A couple other passages that I want you to just note and take a look at. Psalm 84, the verse in the Psalm, they say, "How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of hosts," or "O Lord Almighty. My soul longs and even faints for the courts of the Lord." Again, they're expressing, I've experienced your dwelling place. That's where God is, where your presence is, where your glory is. How lovely is that place? That's what my soul longs for, and even faints, which means I'm consumed with desire. Now, here's the beauty. This is the fuel that will fuel your life in God and your ability to surrender everything to Him and run after Him is if you have an encounter and revelation with Jesus. That thing that ruins you and addicts you to His presence, that's going to be your fuel to joyfully go after Him, not just with religious duty, but to experience that pleasure and delight of actually knowing Him. Now, two things that I want you to do. I want you to begin to pray Ephesians 1, verse 17 through 19. And I also want you to look at and pray for the next 10 days. Meditate on and pray through John 17, verse 24. Now, John 17 is Jesus praying to the Father. And He actually says, Father, I desire. Now, I'm trying to keep this video short, but I could talk about that itself all day, that Jesus actually desires, and He says that those whom you've given me, you and me, to be with me where I am, that they would behold my glory. Jesus is actually telling the Father He desires you to be with Him and for you to experience His glory. I want you to begin to pray that. Father, show me your glory. You've asked the Father for this. This is my inheritance. Let me be in your presence. Paul in Ephesians 1, 17 is praying that you, the church, would have a spirit of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of Christ. He's praying for the church that you would get to experience this man, Jesus. I want you to begin to pray that. Jesus, give me the spirit of wisdom and revelation and the knowledge of you. I'm telling you, if you'll do this for a short time and stick through it, it might be tough for a little bit of time, but it will transform your heart and ruin you for knowing Jesus Christ.